What do you do when the business your father built starts to feel like it's no longer yours? That question had been stuck in Jonah O'Brien's head for weeks. He sat in the back of a black SUV, parked a block away from one of the company's 20 warehouse distribution centers, this one in Spokane. He stared at the employee entrance. His beard had grown in thick, his hair dyed a sandy brown. Glasses, a faded hoodie, and steel toe boots completed the look. If he passed himself in the hallway, even he wouldn't recognize himself. He needed to see it, feel it, not from a spreadsheet. Not from a report, but from inside. The company had grown fast after he took over 7 years ago. It had been his father's pride, and when he passed, Jonah inherited it with a mix of fear and resolve. He'd expanded operations, added new systems, and opened new centers. This warehouse was one of the newer ones opened just 3 years ago. But recently, he'd received a few strange complaints from this location. Low morale, high turnover, and a few whispers about a manager who played favorites. Nothing stood out enough to justify a formal audit. So Jonah decided to go in himself. He walked through the rear entrance at 5:59 a.m., just 1 minute before shift started. A clipboard clutched in his hand with the name Kyle Owens printed on a sticky note. HR had set up the fake identity and background. He was a new temp mail sorter just for a week. The warehouse was massive rows of bins, rolling carts, and conveyor belts. The noise of packages rolling and belts humming filled the space. A bald man with a thick Boston accent and a clipboard waved him over. "You're the new guy?" the man asked. "Yeah, Kyle," Jonah replied, nodding. "All right, I'm Rick, sorting Bay 4, you'll shadow Piper. Any questions, ask her, not me." Rick walked off before Jonah could say anything else. He found Piper easily short brown hair, sleeves rolled halfway up, already breaking down a tower of boxes like she'd done it 1,000 times. "You Kyle?" she asked, glancing up. "Yeah, all right, gimme 2 minutes. We're behind from yesterday." She didn't waste words, but didn't seem cold either. Just focused. Jonah jumped in beside her, following her rhythm. She explained the color-coded labels, how to scan quickly, and which bins got priority. She was efficient but patient, correcting him when needed but never with an attitude. By lunch, he was sweating. His back ached. Piper handed him a bottle of water and glanced at him. "You're doing all right. Better than the last 3 temps," she said, half smiling. Jonah chuckled. "That bad?" One guy scanned 500 boxes and mislabeled half of them. "Took us a day to fix." They sat on a bench behind the warehouse near the loading dock. Jonah noticed several workers seemed quiet, heads down. A few avoided Rick altogether. "Is it always this tense?" he asked. Piper hesitated. "Just don't get too comfortable, they're quick to cut temps." "And some folks around here don't need a reason." Jonah raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" She hesitated again, then shrugged. "You'll see." The next day started like the first, early, loud, fast. Jonah fell into rhythm, sorting beside Piper. She shared little bits about her life, a brother back home, working 2 jobs, saving for a nursing program. Around mid-morning, while collecting bins of misrouted packages, Jonah carried them to the back office hallway. The door to the manager's office was cracked open. He heard voices. "Piper," came Rick's voice. "Yeah, I'm done with her." Jonah froze. "She's reliable," said a second voice, female, older. "Probably the district manager," he guessed. "Sure, but she's not a team player. Too many opinions. The new guy's better already. I'll cut her this Friday." Jonah's gut twisted. "She's been here almost 3 years," the woman said, more cautious now. "Exactly. Time for fresh blood. She'll get over it." Jonah stepped back, his hand gripping the bin tightly. He didn't know what made him angrier, the smugness in Rick's voice, or the fact that Piper, one of the most dependable people he'd met in months, was being let go for no reason. He walked back to his sorting station, face tight. "Everything okay?" Piper asked. Jonah nodded slowly. "Yeah. Just thinking." But inside, something had shifted. He'd come here to observe. Now he was here to stop something. The next morning, Jonah showed up 10 minutes early. He waited by the lockers, scanning the warehouse floor through the narrow hallway window. Rick hadn't arrived yet. Piper was already at her station, folding down shipping crates with her headphones in. Jonah walked out onto the floor and joined her. "No coffee?" she asked, glancing at his empty hands, didn't stop. "Figured I'd just sweat it out anyway." She gave a soft laugh and handed him a sealed granola bar. "You'll need that more." They worked the first hour in near silence, the warehouse slowly filling with the usual buzz of forklifts and belt motors. Jonah kept his head down, but his eyes moved constantly. He watched how Rick hovered around a few of the younger workers near Bay 2, giving correction after correction, his voice always just a few decibels too loud. One of the newer guys, a kid barely out of high school, from the looks of it looked like he was trying not to be noticed. Every time Rick passed, the kid's shoulders tightened. Jonah leaned over quietly. "You know the guy in the red hoodie, Jalen? Came in last week. He doing okay?" Piper slowed her scanning. "Hard to say. Rick's been on him since day one, keeps saying he's not moving fast enough." "Is he?" "He's new. He's not slow, just careful. That's apparently a problem." Jonah didn't respond, he just kept sorting. Midway through the morning, Rick rounded the corner and tapped Jonah on the shoulder. "Hey Kyle, you're with me, we're short in receiving. Let's go." Jonah followed him past the main sorting lanes toward the far end of the warehouse where delivery trucks backed in. The loading bay was loud and colder, the overhead doors cracked open. A few workers were unloading boxes onto pallets, and one woman was trying to organize a dozen bins on her own. "This is Amanda," Rick said, motioning toward her. "Help her out. And move faster than she does." Amanda gave a polite nod, but her face was stiff. As Rick walked off, she leaned in. "He always talks to people like that. Only if he remembers your name," she said, which he doesn't. They worked together, quietly efficient. Amanda moved with purpose, but there was a weariness behind it. Jonah could see she knew the job inside out. They had barely finished the second pallet when one of the bay doors slid open and a truck backed in. Rick reappeared minutes later, clipboard in hand. "You two are behind. This was supposed to be done 20 minutes ago." Amanda straightened up. "We've been moving non-stop since you sent the last load. It's the third truck in an hour." Rick stepped closer. "Excuses don't move freight." Jonah opened his mouth, but Amanda shook her head slightly. "Not now." Rick walked off without another word. As the truck was being unloaded, Amanda rolled her shoulder and winced. Jonah noticed. "You all right?" She nodded, but her voice was quieter now. "Just a strain. Happens when you do this 6 days straight." He glanced around. "You get any help down here?" "Seems like a lot for 2 people. "Not usually. We had 3 people quit last month. They haven't replaced them. Just keep telling us to dig deep." Jonah didn't respond. He just kept moving boxes, but every word etched itself deeper into his thoughts. By the lunch break, he'd made up his mind. He wasn't just going to observe anymore. He needed to know how deep this went. Back in the break room, the energy was flat. People sat in small groups, barely talking. Jalen sat by himself near the vending machine. Jonah walked over and sat beside him. "Mind if I join?" Jalen shrugged. "Sure." Jonah leaned back. "How's the first week been?" Jalen hesitated. "It's fine." Jonah didn't push. He opened his lunch and waited. After a minute, Jalen glanced over. "I've had worse jobs, but this one, I don't know." "Feels like you have to guess what'll get you yelled at." "Rick," Jalen nodded. "He says I overthink things, but if I don't double-check, he calls me careless." Jonah kept his voice steady. "You ever go to HR?" Jalen shook his head quickly. "No way, people who do that don't last." "I'm just trying to keep my head down." Jonah's stomach turned. He looked around the break room. Half the employees looked like they were waiting for the bell to ring at the end of a long school day. After lunch, he returned to Bay 4. Piper was reassembling crates and loading fresh bins. "You okay?" she asked, noticing his expression. "Been better." She wiped her hands on a towel. "If you're planning on quitting, at least wait until the end of the week. I'm tired of retraining people." Jonah chuckled, then fell silent again. She reached for another stack of crates. "You're not a temp, are you?" He froze. "What? You work like someone who's done this before, but you watch people like someone who's in charge of something." Jonah didn't answer right away. She folded her arms. "Am I wrong?" He looked her in the eye. "No," she blinked. You're not a manager, are you? Wait. Don't tell me I need to see it myself, Jonah said quietly. I had reports, but they don't show you this. Before Piper could respond, a loud crash echoed from the far side of the warehouse. A metal shelf had tipped, spilling boxes across the floor. Shouts followed. Jonah and Piper ran over. Jalen was standing near the mess, his face pale. Rick stormed in seconds later. What the hell happened? Jalen stammered. I was trying to shift the bin and the wheel caught. Rick cut him off. You cost us $300 in damages and an hour of cleanup. That's it, you're out. Jalen's eyes widened. Wait, what? It was an accident, you're done. Grab your stuff. Jonah stepped forward. That seems excessive. Rick turned. You don't get a vote, new guy. Jonah didn't blink. He deserves a warning, not an instant termination. Rick sneered. I've had it with you temps thinking you know better. Jonah raised his voice just enough. I'm not a temp. The room stilled. Forklifts stopped. Conversations froze. Rick's mouth opened, then closed again. What? I'm Jonah O'Brien, owner of this company. Silence. Piper stepped back, stunned. Amanda, who had arrived behind them, looked like she'd just seen a ghost. Jonah turned to Jalen. You're not fired. Go take a break. We'll handle this. Rick's face had drained of color. I had no idea. You've been intimidating staff, undermining dependable employees, and terminating people without due process. I heard you planning to fire Piper for no reason. Rick glanced at the others. Nobody came to his defense. Jonah's tone dropped. You're done here. Effective immediately. Turn over your badge and leave the premises. Rick stood frozen for a moment. Then, without a word, he tossed his badge on a table and walked out. Jonah turned to the rest of the group. We're going to fix this. And it starts now. Jonah stood in the center of the warehouse floor, the silence still hanging thick in the air after Rick's exit. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Everyone back to your stations. We'll clean up the spill together. There were no questions, no hesitation. The employees got to work and Jonah joined them, lifting boxes and righting the bench shelving until the mess was cleared. He didn't delegate. He bent and lifted and sorted like anyone else. Piper approached him once the floor was back in order. I didn't expect you to step in like that. You shouldn't have to expect it. It should just happen. She nodded, then looked toward the back hallway. What's going to happen now? I'm staying through the end of the week. After that, we'll talk. Jonah walked toward the small office Rick had once claimed. It was cluttered. The desk was covered in printouts, outdated schedules, and a half-empty bottle of antacids. The computer still showed the login screen. He pushed the door open wider. Amanda walked past and paused. You need help getting access? I'll have corporate IT unlock it remotely, Jonah said, but I could use your eyes. She stepped inside. What are we looking for? Patterns. Anything that shows how staffing, evaluations, or terminations were handled. Amanda pulled a dusty binder from the bottom shelf. He kept write-ups in here, at least the ones he bothered filing. Jonah flipped through it. The pages were inconsistent, some had full descriptions. Others were blank except for a name and a date. He held one up. This is Piper's, no explanation, just a warning logged 3 months ago. Amanda leaned in. That was the week she asked for a shift change, said she was going to school part-time. He said it showed a lack of commitment. Jonah stared down at the sheet. He used this as justification to build a case. He did that with a few people. Especially women, now that I think about it. Quiet ones stayed safe. If you talked or requested anything, you ended up on his radar. Jonah set the binder down. We'll need to interview everyone who received a write-up in the past 6 months, quietly. Amanda straightened. You want me to help with that? You've been here a while. People trust you. I'll handle the formal meetings, but I need a read on who's ready to talk. As Amanda left the office, Jonah placed a call to the regional HR director. Within the hour, an audit team was approved to fly in by end of day tomorrow. It wasn't just about Rick. It was about the system that let him operate unchecked. By the afternoon, Jonah returned to the floor. The rhythm had changed. People weren't relaxed exactly, but the edge had softened. He joined Piper again at Bay 4. You serious about staying the whole week? I am. She scanned a package and placed it in the bin. You know people are going to start talking. The ones who weren't here this morning will hear it secondhand. Let them. I want them to know I'll listen. She handed him a misrouted envelope. Then you should talk to Rosa. She's been fighting to get someone to listen for a year. Where is she? Break room. She's on her 15. Jonah washed his hands and headed to the back. Rosa sat near the window, rubbing her left wrist and sipping from a thermos. Her uniform was neatly pressed, her posture tired but upright. He approached slowly. Can I sit? She looked up and gave a small nod. Sure, I'm Jonah. I know. He waited. She didn't offer anything else. I was told you've been trying to raise concerns. I'd like to hear them. Rosa set her thermos down. I've been here 4 years. In that time, I've seen good people driven out and lazy ones promoted for keeping quiet. Promoted by Rick. Mostly. Some by the district manager, Miss Keller. She never visited in person. Just approved whatever Rick recommended. Jonah leaned forward. What kind of things did he recommend? Last spring, he wanted to eliminate the night shift. Said it was too expensive. I told him if we did that, we'd never meet delivery cutoffs. He said I was being dramatic. A month later, he blamed me for late shipments. Is that on record? I filed a rebuttal. HR never followed up. Jonah took a deep breath. That's going to change. Rosa studied his face. You mean that? I do, she nodded. Then I'll help. I kept copies of everything. Every schedule change, every write-up he gave without cause, every time we logged overtime he refused to approve. Jonah tried not to show his reaction. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Some people here gave up trying. They won't speak unless they know it's safe. I'll make it safe. When her break ended, Jonah returned to the locker area. Jalen was there, sitting on a bench, his backpack beside him. You heading out? Jalen avoided eye contact. Didn't think I'd still be here. You are. That wasn't your fault. Jalen nodded, but his shoulders stayed tense. You want to stay? I want the job. I just didn't think anyone would fight for me to keep it. Jonah sat down beside him. You're not invisible here, not anymore. Jalen didn't respond, but he didn't get up either. That was enough for now. By shift's end, Jonah had a list of names from Amanda. Employees who had either been targeted, silenced, or quietly pushed out. He stayed late, reviewing the schedule and cross-checking write-ups against turnover. Patterns emerged quickly. Younger workers let go after minor infractions. Women written up after requesting schedule changes or time off. Employees of color disproportionately placed in the heaviest labor zones. It was subtle but deliberate. The next morning, he met with the HR audit team in the back office. They set up in a storage room away from the floor and began private interviews. Jonah didn't attend those. He didn't need to. His job was to be visible. He spent the day moving between bays, helping load pallets, restocking bins, answering questions, not as the CEO. Just as someone willing to work. Around mid-afternoon, Amanda approached him quietly. Can you come with me? He followed her to the receiving area. A young woman stood by the loading dock, tears streaked across her cheeks. Her hands trembled, palms red from gripping a pallet jack. Amanda spoke gently. This is Kendra. She's been here 2 weeks. Jonah nodded. Hi, Kendra. She wiped her face quickly. I'm sorry, I just needed a second. What happened? She said. Rick used to corner her near the dock, Amanda said. Said she needed to learn how to keep up if she wanted to stay. Kendra looked away. It wasn't just that. He'd comment on how I looked, said I didn't belong in this kind of job, that I should be out front smiling instead of hiding back here. Jonah's face hardened. Did anyone else witness that? I don't think so. He only did it when we were alone, but I stopped taking my breaks because I didn't want to run into him in the hallway. Amanda placed a hand on her shoulder. Jonah said nothing at first, then he turned to Amanda. Make sure she gets the rest of the day, full pay, and I want a formal complaint filed. We'll include it in the audit. Kendra looked up. You're not just saying that? No, Jonah said. And I'm sorry no one stopped it sooner. Later, as the shift wound down, Piper approached him in the hallway. I heard what happened with Kendra. She's not the only one. We've got a lot to fix. Piper hesitated, then said, You really didn't know any of this? No, and that's on me. I built something too fast and assumed it would run right. You're here now. That counts for something. Jonah looked out at the floor. Workers were moving, still tired, still pushing through. But the silence that had ruled the warehouse, it was gone. Tomorrow, he would meet with the regional leadership and start reassigning authority. But tonight, he stayed late again. Not because he had to, because he owed it to them. He owed them the truth, and a workplace that finally felt like one. Jonah arrived before sunrise on Friday, the final day of his undercover visit. The warehouse floor was still, lit only by overhead fluorescents humming faintly. He stood in the silence for a minute, watching the empty sorting lanes, the rolling carts parked neatly along the walls. The past 4 days had unraveled more than he expected, some of it painful, some of it deeply necessary. He walked toward the break room where the audit team had been stationed since the previous afternoon. They were already there, notebooks open, 2 laptops casting soft light across the table. One of them looked up. We've finished the initial interviews. We'll need a few more days to finalize the findings, but a pattern is clear. Jonah nodded. I'll want every case reviewed. If someone left under pressure, I want to know why, and if they deserve a chance to come back, we offer it. The lead auditor closed her notebook. We've flagged 7 personnel files for inappropriate disciplinary action. 3 of those people were pushed out without cause. One of them was terminated after requesting a schedule accommodation for medical treatment. Document everything. I'll handle the outreach personally. He left the room and crossed the warehouse floor as the first shift began to arrive. Piper was already stacking fresh bins, moving slightly slower than usual. She nodded as he passed, but said nothing. Amanda came in from receiving, her left wrist wrapped now in a compression bandage. Rosa walked in behind her, carrying a clipboard and a small black binder. They're waiting in the office, Rosa said, handing him the binder. I thought you'd want this with you. He took it and opened it briefly. Inside were hand-signed statements from 12 employees, some current, a few past, each outlining the same pattern of retaliation, dismissal, or repeated neglect. Thank you, he said. I told them you'd read every one. I will. Inside the office, the district manager, Karen Keller, stood by the window with her arms crossed. 2 regional supervisors sat beside the desk, neither making eye contact with Jonah. He placed the binder on the table and stayed standing. I've reviewed every complaint, I've seen the write-ups. I've spoken to the people who stayed and the ones who left. What happened here is unacceptable, not just because of one manager, but because of your failure to supervise him. Karen shifted her weight. We didn't have any formal complaints on file until recently. You had turnover, you had performance issues, you had absenteeism and unapproved terminations. You didn't need formal complaints, you needed to visit. We trusted the numbers, she said. You trusted convenience. Rick ran this place like a fiefdom and no one stopped him. That ends today. One of the supervisors cleared his throat. What do you want from us exactly? Effective immediately, Karen, you're relieved of regional oversight. You'll be reassigned pending further review. Both of you will conduct follow-up interviews with every employee in your territory and report directly to me. And every decision you make for the next 90 days will require my sign-off. Karen opened her mouth to respond, but Jonah stopped her. We're not debating this. We're rebuilding. He turned and walked out. Piper was waiting just outside, arms folded, eyes steady. They're gone, she asked, on their way out. A small group of employees had gathered near Bay 1. Amanda stood beside Jalen, who looked uncertain, backpack slung over one shoulder. Jonah walked over and addressed them all. I came here to see if the rumors were true, he said. What I found was worse than I expected, but I also found people who kept this place running despite it. People who showed up, stayed late, and worked through things that never should have been asked of them. No one spoke, but they listened. Some of you were written up unfairly. Some of you were ignored when you asked for help. Some of you thought no one would ever notice. That changes now, he looked at Amanda. You're being promoted to interim floor manager, effective today. Your leadership under pressure has been clear. Amanda blinked. I didn't ask, you didn't have to, you earned it. He turned to Rosa. You'll help revamp the training and onboarding process. We need your experience and I want new hires to learn the right way, she nodded slowly. Understood. He faced Jalen next. You're staying. If you still want the job, it's yours long term. No more guessing games. Jalen looked down and gave a single nod. Starting next week, Jonah continued, we'll add 2 new hires to the floor and restructure the schedule to reduce overtime strain. It won't fix everything overnight, but it's a start. Piper raised her hand slightly. Are you just doing this here or across all locations? Every warehouse, every manager, every policy. This wasn't just one bad hire, it was a system that stopped paying attention. That's on me. And I'm not going to let it happen again. He left them to return to work. Not out of dismissal, but because talk alone wouldn't change anything. By midday, the tempo on the floor had shifted. People moved with more focus, less tension. The silence that had marked the beginning of the week had been replaced with cautious conversation, even laughter quietly at times. Piper approached him near the sorting line. You going to disappear after today? I'll be back. But not undercover. When I show up next, it'll be as myself. She nodded. You should know people were talking over break about staying. About maybe not quitting after all. That's good to hear. She looked him over. You looked different when you walked in Monday. I was. He headed toward the exit as the afternoon shift arrived. On the way out, he passed the wall near the locker room, the one where the old mission statement had been pinned years ago. The paper had yellowed, curls at the edges, mostly ignored. He stopped and pulled it down. That version didn't mean anything anymore. It hadn't for a long time. Outside, the sky had darkened with early winter clouds. He stepped into the cold, pulled out his phone, and dialed his executive assistant. Schedule a meeting with the heads of every division. Monday morning. Full review of site operations, top to bottom. And get me a team to start rewriting our core values. From scratch. He hung up and stood by the loading dock for a moment longer. The real work was just beginning. But now, he finally knew where to start.